Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, EmeraldPlanet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the EmeraldPlanet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the EmeraldPlanet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe for the 1,000 best practices for the products, the services, and the technologies that are making a difference in the 21st centuries. One of the things that we talk about incessantly is that 5 things can address many of the issues as we go around the globe, looking at climate change and the various infrastructure needs of societies, is money, 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 and more money. And we have some experts who are going to be talking with us today about how to find the alternative funding and resources that are necessary to go in to take care of energy efficiency, conservation, and also alternative energy production. And then we'll be talking about the international and how the Power for Peace can reach out to bring energy efficiency as well as food and water production to those greatest at needs around the globe. Right beside me, coming whizzing in from the airport, is Shannon Smith, who is the CEO of Abundant Power Group. And Shannon, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. And we're going to bring up your logo here, the very first one, and tell us a little bit about Abundant Power and why did you start this organization?
Well, I started Abundant Power a couple years ago, and it was one of those times in my life where I've been working in private equity for a long time, and I decided I really wanted to do something that was more missional with my life. I have 2 sets of twins at home.
I like that term. You had missional in one of the questions that you had, and I think it's fantastic because many business people don't think about we really do have a mission in life.
We do, and I wanted something that could make this world a better place for my children, at the same time have a commercial sustainability to it that would make sense.
Okay, and looking at what were you doing before you started this, and I want to get up the logo here because I really like your logo, and it really adds and entices what we're talking about as far as abundant power. So if we can bring that up on the screen here. But let's go ahead and finish off. What were you doing before you started Abundant Power?
So Abundant Power was the logo is Smart Capital for Clean Energy, and I was in private equity, as I mentioned earlier, and I wanted to take all the skills I had learned in the private equity world and redirect them towards scaling the clean energy economy, and that's what all of us, the whole team at Abundant Power, is all about, is scaling the clean energy economy with financial products that will help it grow.
Yeah, I was talking with some of the folks when we had the Green Investors, if you will, forum here in Washington, D.C., and we were talking about this balance between the commercial and residential, and understand that you really, in this missional concept that you have, that you really want to have a broad front. You want to do the commercial, possibly in the governmental and education, as well as residential.
Yeah, we're focused really on all dimensions of the clean energy economy. We're fortunate that we're in Charlotte, North Carolina. This company cannot grow without being in Charlotte. We have a great team because it's been assembled from all the financial service talent that's there, folks that have got great skills from other sectors like residential loan underwriting or commercial investing, and want to repurpose those toward the clean energy economy. So we've been able to build our team in the Charlotte area because of that.
Well, many people don't really know about Charlotte, North Carolina, but it really is an engine for economic development and financing. Tell us a little bit just about Charlotte itself.
Well, Charlotte is quickly growing. We're going to be hosting the Democratic National Convention. I think it's moved into the top 20 cities in the U.S. We're also headquarters of Duke Energy, which will soon be the largest utility in the country. So it's a great place to be, but we couldn't, again, do Abundant Power without being in a financial service town with all the talent that we have. And we've been able to assemble a great team, all of whom are focused on solving and creating financial products for the clean energy space.
Now, looking at, you have 3 different divisions, and it's quite impressive about those. Tell us about each of those 3, and then what we want to do is move in from the divisions between that, no pun intended, and then really how they populate and really support one another.
Sure. Well, we have 3 divisions. We have Abundant Power Capital, which is a private equity arm. We have Abundant Power Solutions, which invest in the energy efficiency space in the built environment, which means in buildings. And then we have Abundant Power Community Energy, whose purpose is to help communities and schools achieve their sustainability goals in the projects they want to undertake. So 3 groups, all the dedicated teams, and all focused on their specific missions.
Well, just the energy and the information that you were sharing to the Green Investors Forum here in Washington, D.C. really attest to that, because I was really interested to see how they were moving and talking with both the institutional, the private equity, and many of the other participants there. And yet, staying through the whole time, there was an absolute focus on your mission, what you're doing. People stayed on message, and that says a lot about your leadership.
Well, we won't take anything on unless we think it can scale the clean energy economy, and so that sort of creates the goalpost. But inside of that, there's a lot of room to maneuver.
Now, looking at those 3, any of those 3 dominant, or do you really try to keep those going in tandem so they're all working together at the same time?
Well, our first 2 divisions, and I can explain those, are probably the strongest, and we've just launched Abundant Power Community Energy. Abundant Power Capital is the business that we have started that has a fund that invests in growing businesses. Mm-hmm. It's called the Clean Source Growth Equity Fund. And what we do there is we take companies that have already graduated from the venture capital space and are seeking to grow. In fact, we're trying to help the winners win. And we provide them the growth they need to scale further. The venture capitalists aren't interested, are no longer interested. They may not be able to go public, but they're growing at 20 or 30% a year. And they have a real opportunity if they have capital and a partner to come alongside them. For example, right now we're working and investing in businesses in the geothermal HVAC industry. They've created an application that cuts the field of the geothermal field in half, thereby reducing payback and allowing geothermal HVAC to scale.
Well, the whole thing about having that is what you're doing is you're really trying to match the equity investments, if you will, in the various technologies and the products, most of which are off the shelf, proven technologies, and that goes to actually pay back or guarantee the loans that are being made on that.
Well, what we're investing in is equity. These are businesses they're no longer technologies looking to be a business. They're businesses with technology looking to grow.
Right.
So we're not betting on business technologies that haven't been proven. They're proven. They have customers. They have achievable growth arcs, and we just try to help them achieve those arcs.
Well, looking at these also, too, as far as the power solutions, tell us a little more about that and how that they are able to use these proven technologies to really enhance the bottom line.
Well, the equity fund invests in 3 distinct areas: energy performance, energy management, and clean energy generation. All 3 of those are large markets. There's the built environment, there's transportation, there's packaging in the energy efficiency area. Energy management is about smart grid. It's a large industry that a lot of the utilities are scaling. And then clean energy generation, we tend to look at those clean energies that are not dependent on subsidies. Maybe some of the less sexy ones like waste to energy.
Oh, okay. Looking at that, let's bring these slides back up because I wanted to talk about this. And this is this clean source growth equity that you have going here. Tell us a little more about that, and then how are you going to scale that for the future? Because I know that you're growing at a very rapid rate.
Well, we think that there's $22 billion estimated by some research groups that needs to be spent in the growth equity space. We're one of the few funds in the country that actually focuses on growth equity and the needs of companies that are growing. So we think there's a great opportunity in front of us. Our initial fund's only $50 million. So
only $50 million.
We have a long way to go.
That sounds like real money, though. But looking at this, why are so few companies involved in this?
I think, there tends to be a barbell approach. You have the venture capitalists who want to sometimes play in growth equity, and sometimes the larger businesses will come down, but no one really knows how to take these companies and marshal them along, and that's what we try to do.
Well, looking at this, this is impressive as far as the collaborators you have. Of course, we met through what's going on here in Washington, D.C., but tell us about these others. You got some areas around the entire United States that you're working with.
Well, we have a second division that focuses on energy efficiency, and energy efficiency is a tremendous opportunity. It's the largest amount of energy spend we have in our country for buildings. And also buildings emit the largest amount of greenhouse gas emissions, bigger than transportation.
See, that's the whole thing about this, Shannon. Most people think about transportation, all the trucks and cars on the road, but yet the combination buildings, commercial and private homes, actually are the ones, the greatest emitter of greenhouse gases.
So what we're working on is we started, our core competency is energy underwriting, and that's where you invest capital in a building in a way that it generates a return against the capital it's invested, whether it's debt or equity or both. So we started out working with municipalities. We worked with the state of Alabama for a program called Alabama Saves. We're working, I think you're going to have Nina Albert on shortly, who's with the District of Columbia Commercial PACE program, which is financing energy efficiency on a property tax bill. So we've really specialized in this whole energy efficiency underwriting space. We also do a lot with the Better Buildings Challenge from the Department of Energy, which we're working to scale, investing in the built environment with the White House, using qualified energy conservation bonds, an underlooked opportunity that many municipalities have underneath their nose to create green building programs.
And all this relates to jobs, and more jobs, and that's something I don't think we really think about, Shannon, the number of jobs that can be created in this, and we just really need to get on about it.
Yeah, I mean, energy efficiency is the cheapest energy we have. It's anywhere from 2 to 8 cents a kilowatt. It can even be less in some areas. And the work starts immediately. You don't really need to get too many permits. It's all proven technology. Just get to work. So it's a great opportunity.
Now, looking at the XP and the XP Plus that you have here, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, those are innovations we came up with, and it's what our customers know this product.
So this is something unique to your Abundant Power.
There are a few others out there, but we think we're unique in offering two distinct financing products to owners of buildings or to utilities or to mechanical contractors, for people that have investments that need to be made in their buildings but don't have the money to do it. And so what we do is we take their utility bill and turn it into a power purchase agreement. And by saving them money, they're able to finance the investments we make in the building, and the savings go to pay back our investors.
Can you tell us a little more about this power purchase agreement? What is entailed in that?
What we are doing is we look at their utility bills over the last 2 years, and we create a baseline. And then they agree to pay that baseline for a period of time to us. And that's no more, no less than what they paid for the last 2 years.
So really it's nothing out of their pocket. It's something they've already been doing. It's already in the budget, something they're comfortable with, and you're just moving them along. So again, they're actually earning more. It adds to the bottom line.
It's creating capital for them as a unique financing vehicle. It's capital expenditures they don't have to spend, and also they get savings back from us.
Well, I'm going to go back to this Abundant Power. We're just about finished here, and looking at what you're doing, we need to get off. So, Shannon, thank you for being with us and talking about Abundant Power. And we love the innovations you're doing, and thanks for helping us to build the Emerald Planet.
Thank you.
Some dreams are universal. Dreams that inspire us. Multiple sclerosis is a devastating disease that changes lives forever. The National MS Society does more for people with MS than any organization in the world. But we can't do it alone. To get involved, visit us online at nationalmssociety.org. or call 1-800-FIGHT-MS. This is why we're here. Because nobody dreams of having multiple sclerosis.
What's wrong with this picture? Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Geography is everywhere. It's incredible creatures, rhythm, fashion, flavor. It's economics and politics. It's change. Understanding connections between people and places is critical in the 21st century. That's why we created mywonderfulworld.org. Go there now for your free parent and teacher action kits and give our kids the power of global knowledge. Because kids who understand our world today can succeed in it tomorrow.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
And welcome back to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe in 143 different nations, looking for the best technologies, the services, and the products, and also the people that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. One of the things that every society needs, and particularly in the United States and North America, as we look for energy efficiency, conservation, and alternative power production, are the funds to be able to do that. As many people know, it's very difficult to deal with many of the financial institutions, and so there are a number of organizations that are developing creative methods of providing the financing, actually using the energy savings on the buildings and taking the enhancements and the conservation practices to take these buildings to a new level. Stephen Siegel is the principal of Davey Street Partners. And Stephen, welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm going to use your nickname, if you don't mind, Steve. That's okay.
That's fine.
And we have some slides that are just going to kind of roll through this conversation over the next 13 minutes. And these came from various projects within Washington, D.C., and not necessarily related directly to Steve, but Steve has a lot of experience because he worked with the city here and also has worked in the private sector. So you have a very good balance between private and government, and then also in education.
Yes, yeah. I spent 3 years at the city in the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. I was Director of Development there, overseeing the city's public-private real estate development portfolio, as well as handling a number of policy matters, one of which was implementing the district's Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, also known as PACE, as the acronym.
And I know this is something that's being looked at and are used around the country, and it's a very important instrument because as it becomes more and more difficult to actually provide funding for new upgrades, retrogrades as they call it, as far as the technologies and even enhancement to the buildings, you really need to have some of these alternatives. How did these alternatives come into being? And I know that you actually have been a part of that.
Yes, well, during my time at the city, there was a Department of Energy grant program or grant available, and came across my desk one day and looked into it a little further and gathered a group of experts together and came up with basically the conclusion that PACE is a pretty sound concept for financing energy retrofits. So pursued it and ultimately was successful in legislating the Energy Efficiency Financing Act of 2010 in the District of Columbia, which basically gives the district government the authority to assess properties that volunteer or participate in the program.
And this is something, Steve, I think is very important to realize that there's just a huge number of buildings that are, many of them are 5 to 7, 10 years old or older. And so many of them do not have sufficient insulation or sealing, the proper HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, many of the things that really make them much more energy efficient. And so as we're looking at these buildings and bringing them up to more advanced levels as we go through the 21st century is really the low-hanging fruit as far as reduction on imported fuels and energy, and to not have to invest in new power plants.
Right. It can really be helpful by doing these types of retrofits on a national basis, and this program really has the potential to do that, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, also reduce the burden on the grid, and reduce the amount of fossil fuels we're using. A lot of the buildings just in the District of Columbia are 40, 50 years old, and they're really inefficient from an energy perspective.
And that's when energy was really cheap. And this little diagram, I think this is really cute. This is a PNC Bank that's going to be going in, so we giving full attribution to where these came from. But also, Steve, and this is something that near and dear to your heart too, is this goes way beyond just the energy part as far as to stop the flow of water into the creeks, the streams, and also the wastewater system, to be able to use the gray water around the buildings, and also with the green roofs to cut down the amount of energy usage, and also cut the velocity of water. So when you're looking at a building, what's some of the things based on your private hat now do you actually look for in the buildings, and how can you actually help the building owner or the note holder to say, hey, you can actually be making more money off of this building than what you're doing today?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I've done a lot of retrofit work, a lot of acquisition rehab, as it's referred to in the multifamily industry in any sector. You're really looking for building skin issues that may, lead to energy loss or energy inefficiency. Windows are always a big point to take note of, and insulation, roofing, and then you just look at building mechanical systems. That is usually the easiest way to find energy savings, is to replace antiquated systems.
Particularly when you're talking about these buildings 30, 40, and 50 years old, and my understanding is from our conversations actually in the past, there are a number of these buildings throughout the entire district, and of course they're across the whole country and overseas as well.
Oh, absolutely. And this is really an interesting way. It's a shame that the federal government is sort of in this bipartisan, polarized mode where they're not really terribly effective these days. And it would be great if there were some way to guarantee the PACE program through really not a lot of money. We're not talking about, relatively speaking, a lot of money that would be needed to implement this program on a broad scale and really create ultimately millions of jobs. And it's relatively easy to do.
And looking at this here, this is something that created, my understanding is, over 100 jobs as far as retrofitting the Sidwell Friends School right here, which is the first LEED Platinum school building, understanding, in the entire world. And what you're looking at is a combination here of green roof with actual plantings up there to cut the rain runoff, but also to increase the energy efficiency, but also they started producing the energy could actually be used during the school day when the energy costs are at the highest. So when you're looking at a building, how do you balance this, and how do you know that actually a roof, a building, can take the extra weight, or is that really a matter of consideration when you're trying to do these things with a retrofit?
Well, the loading on the roof, for example, was really something. It's really more of an engineering issue, and it's a matter of cost. You also need a large open roof without a lot of penetrations or varying elevations.
A lot of mechanical systems already on the roof itself.
Correct. Yeah, you don't want it to be any more complicated than it already is. But really, another really efficient way to save energy is looking at using the ground in a geothermal context, to put geothermal systems in. Where there's land, either a horizontal system or a vertical system, meaning you're drilling down in the vertical deep into the ground. And we looked at that actually in a project in the district while I was there, a project called Canal Blocks Park down in the Capitol Riverfront neighborhood. We looked at utilizing the park land actually to drill wells for a geothermal system to serve a district building adjacent, and ultimately the time frames didn't work out, and the dollars weren't there, but it would have been a tremendous use of public land. Ultimately, the development association that's building the park is going to use geothermal system to heat and cool their pavilion building on the park. So that project is really an icon of sustainability.
And we have a number of leaders, both in municipal governments, state governments, and also universities and public education. So using the Sidwell School here as an example, what are some of the savings that some of the managers, owners of these buildings could realize by going through and have a energy audit of the entire building, the mechanicals, the building itself, and the use of the land like you're talking about as far as the geothermal, so that, again, long term, it's actually the building is helping to pay for itself instead of being a cost center.
Right, and that's something you see. It's interesting. Most of the energy companies out there are touting the ability for them to come in and finance the project for them, finance the improvements for them. So building owners always, the first step is always to start with the energy audit and figure out how much savings can be realized through a properly engineered retrofit. And then there's an endless list of companies out there that are now promoting themselves as a one-stop shop where they can come in and pay for the improvements, and the energy savings, participation in energy savings helps to finance it. And that's similar to the PACE model as well, where the energy savings are used. That seems to be the trend. It seems to be how all of these energy financings are set up.
I know that we've been talking with you through the Jobonomics program with Chuck Vollmer, a good friend, a mutual friend of ours. He's been on this television program several different times, and he's talking about the e-cycle e-waste program, and that's a little different tack than what we're doing, but again is taking waste and making it as a natural resource almost, so it's a renewable. How do you think going in and taking these older buildings and bringing them up to date, but actually using them and positioning them for new uses is really an efficient way in brownfield situations of increasing the value to the city, to the private land and building owner, and also a company such as yours that actually may be investing in some of these projects?
Well, I think there's certainly a lot of opportunity to take on projects like that where there are buildings either where an adaptive reuse is appropriate, and or just taking a building and completely gutting it, starting over. In many cases, that's really the answer and the solution. It's difficult sometimes to use what's there and to try and patch it as opposed to just hitting.
But if you're in a high-intensity urban environment, which now 54% of the population and around the globe lives in that environment, really, whatever the land is there, you have to use it.
Right.
So looking at where we're going in the future, where is the Dewey Street going? And then how do you think the federal government, so this is kind of a two-pronged question, and we only have about 30 seconds left, how does that fit together?
Well, I'm hopeful that Davey Street has an opportunity to implement help implement the PACE program locally and maybe on a national basis, but certainly on a local basis. I'd love to see the district really grab it and wrestle it down and get the program started.
5 seconds. How can the federal government get involved?
They can guarantee the loan program behind the PACE program that'll create the jobs.
Well, thank you very much. And Stephen Siegel, thank you for being with us. Great to have you here.
Thank you
for being as we create the Emerald Planet.
I need a job.
Necesito trabajo.
I would like to speak English better.
Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
Por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
el Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
Capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals.
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
Are a small part of what we do.
son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
Para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia,
comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half of it.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe in 143 different nations looking for those best practices that can be used and also the financing that can be used to bring about change as we move through the 21st century. There are many challenges that we have as far as the environment and the economy is concerned, and there are many creative ways that are being developed to address that. And so we're looking at the notion of taking money, investments, and also matching that to a number of green jobs that can be created. And we have experts that are with us throughout the entire program that are talking about the various ways that we can address that. And I have someone behind me that I really have been wanting to meet for quite a while, Nina N. Albert, who is the Special Assistant to the Director in Washington, D.C., and this is the District Department of the Environment, DDOE. And also she had a very intriguing title, so I'm going to bring this up as I told you I would, so you're forewarned, Chief Office of Green Economy, which I know this is folded into your current position. Tell us about this Chief Office of Green Economy. I like that.
Well, I think that both the mayor and then the District of Columbia in general recognizes that real estate development is a significant aspect to our economy. We're often known as the federal city and dependent on federal jobs, and certainly we're known to be a town full of lawyers. But we forget often that there's a whole subset of activity that occurs that support those people. And real estate is a huge piece of that. My background's in real estate development and economic development. And so often as we see the D.C. market transforming and rebuilding its real estate and improving it, that there are jobs that are created by that. And D.C. is one of the leaders in green building. And there are a whole host of jobs that are related to that. And so there's a natural relationship between job development and real estate development.
I was going to say this whole thing, the mantra now is jobs, 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 and jobs.
Yes.
And even more jobs. And, of course, that takes money, 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 and money to do that. So with your private sector background, applying that in the government sphere, that seems like it's a perfect balance. And I believe, just like through this program, we've had over 400 people interview, and you see more and more of this balance, this synergy between private sector and government, and people moving back and forth between those and even into the institutions. So before we get into some of this litany of why Washington, D.C. is really a best practice in itself, how do you see this flow and what are the benefits to the taxpayer, to the localities, having this private-public sector interface?
Well, in general, I think that that's where the best practices are. The public sector has a number of tools that are available to it, whether they be municipal financing tools, whether they be bringing partners together. That often happens, whether it be centralizing various types of resources. And then the private sector, of course, the ability to really move at scale and be able to expand and contract quickly depending on what the needs are.
And so you can really pluck down into society and you say, we need this skill set, and there are people out there like yourself that are really energetic, well-meaning, want to be involved in, what's the future for the 21st century, and say, hey, why don't you come in and provide your expertise and your skills in the government sector, and then you have people in the government sector that know how the system works, and they move into the private sector. And so there, again, this interplay, this interaction, I think that really does help the total community.
Yeah, I agree. And D.C. is a place where I think you see a lot of that fluidity, and I think we're a richer community for it.
Well, I know you're working here in Washington, D.C., but also you've been involved quite internationally, and I have this here purposely so. I went out, and this was actually a presentation you made at the World Bank, so you couldn't get much more international than the World Bank, and so we're really blessed to have these institutions here. But there's some really incredible first and number two and all that. Tell us a little bit about these in the district, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in the district who don't even realize some of this.
I'll tell you, I think that D.C. is completely overlooked for the number of green efforts and leadership points that we have. Our mayor in July of this year announced that he wants to be the most sustainable city in the country, if not in the world.
I know, he always added that, and the world.
And the world, right? But just, I mean, we're a small town, but really, in terms of LEED registered and LEED certified buildings per capita, we exceed New York, we exceed Chicago, we exceed Seattle, which are all recognized as green building leaders. We've also started the largest bike share program in the country, and that's between Arlington and D.C.
I think this is phenomenal, looking at that, Nina, because they put in all these docking stations, and they actually almost started expanding, within the month of actually putting in the first, because people are just using it. And then you have the share car ride program, which is very, very successful. And actually, that's adding more and more jobs into the local economy.
And then I think on top of it is also our River Smart programs, which are really about stormwater management. The EPA is working with the district on creating a 1.2-inch stormwater retention standard. And what that means is that you have to hold 1.2 inches of rainwater on site and reuse it before you're allowed to discharge any more water into the system.
This really goes to this gray water usage we're talking about, and that's really huge. And also this energy usage, these charts, this again, you presented this at the World Bank. I found this really fascinating as far as the energy uses. And of course, most people don't realize that most of the CO2 gas is coming from buildings, not just from vehicles. Tell us a little bit about the three charts that we have.
Well, these charts basically are, first of all, identifying where our energy use and what the source of energy is. So 70% of the city's energy use is consumed by commercial buildings. And there's a direct correlation in this city between electricity use and greenhouse gas emissions. We don't have a strong industrial sector, so whereas other cities you might see a lot more usage or a lot more use of energy or greenhouse gas emissions coming from an industrial sector. We don't have that here. And then also we have tremendously high public transportation usage. So again, the automotive impact on greenhouse gas emissions is not as significant as in other locations. So really, the opportunity is not only in focusing on building solutions for reducing greenhouse gases, but specifically the commercial building sector.
Yeah, and also, too, Nina, I think we're really blessed here to have a very effective and efficient public sector transportation system, and that's something that I know that the citizens and the district itself has really looked at very closely, is how do we keep upgrading the stock that we have. We have a very effective subway system, but the buses moving, from diesels to natural gas to electricity, and it just seems like there's a steady progression, and I think that's something that's not really recognized by the public, and certainly not by the Congress and many of the leaders for the United States.
Well, there are two things on that point, is that we don't realize how much of people's personal expenses or income is used on maintaining their cars and the fuel. And so when we think about being cost competitive as a city, we often take a look at the entire usage of an individual's income. Yes, we have higher rent rates than perhaps the suburbs, but when you calculate on top of that the transportation or transit costs, we actually become much more in line and competitive with the suburbs, because you can almost eliminate those costs.
And I was going to say, there are many people who are looking to move back into the city for the first time. The population's growing, and also we know that the public schools, for the first time in about almost 50 years, growing as well, and that really, this balance between the public sector as far as transportation is concerned and the cost of the housing, which, as you say, is a little bit higher, but at the same time, we really need to look at this balance. But looking at here, as far as the market drivers, as far as energy and energy efficiency, tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Generally speaking, with energy efficiency right now, in order to get widespread market transformation, you need alignment of four general areas. First is policy that supports and mandates energy efficiency and incentivizes it. The availability of new technologies, and we're seeing that all over the place. You see it in the news constantly about a new light bulb or a new heating system, whatever it may be.
Just listen to NPR almost daily, and Tech Tuesday with Kojo Namni, which he actually is now global.
Right.
People all over the world are listening to him as far as his television show. So there's really a lot of things happening. And then finish up with as far as
availability
the
of capital obviously is really important. Otherwise, nobody has any money to invest in technology. And then finally is user demand, and that's something that's often overlooked in conversation, but very important. If people don't want to shift their behavior patterns, then it becomes very difficult for the other three legs of the tent to prop up. But really, there is alignment right now, and there's kind of a lot of movement and jockeying, and kind of all pieces of the tent sort of moving up at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important part. And then the Green Investors Forum that was held and supported by the city. I think that's just critical to all this, because if you don't really have the financing, which is more easy and readily available, then people just get frustrated and they say, look, we'll just keep it as it is and forget all the heartache that's going on with that. Now, looking at this is something as far as the energy efficiency. I know there's a real emphasis on this, and of course, this is now being at the federal and the state, which Washington, D.C. would somewhat qualify in that area, municipal levels. What are we looking at as far as energy efficiency, and how can the federal government help to drive this at the same time to create jobs and to cut costs?
Well, I mean, I think that the federal government has a similar role to local governments in the sense that it needs to put forward policies that are going to encourage investment in energy efficiency. It needs to support and market and let people know that there are private technology solutions out there, and that's good for our economy to have Americans buying from American companies. And then on the capital side, there are a number of different solutions, and the federal government offers these. HUD has a number of different programs called the Power Saver Program. Fannie Mae also is offering some financing programs. Credit enhancement is often what the federal government is looked to in order to sort of bring down the cost of private capital. So there's a lot of different roles. And I think that the federal government is trying to do its best in terms of operating in all four of those spaces.
Well, we have about 45 seconds left, but pace. I know this is something, you're the mommy of this. Steven Siegel is kind of the daddy of this. He was on with us as far as his company is concerned. What is PACE? Very quickly.
PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy. It's a way to extend a loan term, and the funds from a loan would be used to make energy efficiency improvements. And because the repayment of that loan is placed on your property tax bill, you as an owner, when you're ready to sell your property, can transfer that loan to the subsequent property owner. And what that does, and the elegance of it, is that then it allows deeper retrofits, and that's what we all are looking for.
And we're going to talk about this in the future. I think this is a very exciting program, and we're just going to have to get at PACE again. Nina, thank you for being with us, and thank you as we create the Emerald Planet.
Osama bin Laden calls getting nuclear weapons a religious duty.
Today, materials that can be used to make nuclear weapons are stored in more than 40 countries.
Sometimes protected by just a chain-link fence.
Yet not enough is being done to lock down these materials
before terrorists steal them.
Why did we learn all this?
My mother.
My son.
My sister-in-law.
Were all murdered September 11th.
Help protect America.
Together we can.
Please join us.
The stem cell issue is being debated throughout the country. Truth is, most everyone has an opinion, even if they don't know the facts.
Let's stop arguing and start really understanding the potential of stem cell research.
For us and for millions of Americans living with disabilities, get the facts.
Call 1-877-842-3442 for free information from the Stem Cell Research Foundation. That's 1-877-842-3442.
Following the tragic events of September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger when we are united.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
One nation under God.
Indivisible.
With liberty
and justice
for all.
In America, there's either room for everyone or it's not America.
Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
Stop the hate.
Planning a home renovation? Put this at the top of your to-do list. Because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, an up-to-date vaccination called the TD Booster is the best insurance against tetanus. So get the TD Booster. If it's been 10, do it again.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe and various societies that are actually very energy, financially, and infrastructure challenged. We've been talking about the money that's available to increase the energy efficiency, conservation, and alternative power production in the United States and developed nations. Talk about countries like Japan, China, Brazil, Russia, South Africa, and of course most of Europe and some other areas in Latin America. But what we're going to be talking about is really a different thrust. As you know, the Emerald Planet has a program that's called the Power for Peace, where we're working on humanitarian aid as well as blending that in with making the homes, the families, and their communities self-sufficient as far as water, food, and power production. And we have a gentleman with us who's been on once before, James, or he goes by Jim Pinto. He is the Vice President of the Global Benefits Group Foundation. He's going to be coming in to us by Skype. So if we lose him, we have one of our earlier guests, Stephen Siegel, who is the principal of the David Street Partners, and he's been involved with the city government, so he's been moving private-public sector for most of his career. But Jim, are you with us?
Yes, Sam, I sure am. How are you this evening? Hello, Stephen.
It's great to see you again. And I have Steve with me just to make sure if we lose you, then we'll continue right along with the PACE and some other program that you actually had a chance to watch. But what is the genesis of the GBG Foundation?
Okay, some time ago, Global Benefits Group, which is our parent company or our sponsor organization, we're an insurance company based out in California where the CEO, Mr. Andrew Thorburn, he basically had a vision. And that vision was to take some of the benefits and the profits made from within the company and put it into humanitarian purposes. So essentially, that's what he did. We turned around and we did exactly that. We created a new program, and we were working informally in the past doing different types of grants, and we formalized the program and created the Global Benefits Group Foundation.
Well, I want to get some slides up here while we have you on as well, Jim, and because you're working in some of the most challenged areas on the earth. I know you're working with Libya, and also in Ghana and a few other countries that are coming forward. And we'll see if we can get those slides on here. But looking at the foundation, you really have a unique way that you've gone at this as providing the funding. Instead of going out and just doing the whole project by yourself, you've actually looking at collaboration, which is really the movement of the 21st century for both environmental, economic, and humanitarian development. Why did GBG Foundation move in that direction?
Well, very simply, Sam, we're not a very large organization. We have a couple hundred employees around the world, and we do business in well over 70 countries. So the theory we went with was basically helping others help others. Essentially, the way we do this is we work with NGOs, faith-based organizations, missionary groups, anything that partners in a green approach to business or a green style or way that they look to improve the services in the world. Any business that we do, from an underwriting perspective, we will take in a portion of our resources from that and place it into the foundation. Then the foundation is funded from those sources. In addition, it's also funded from external sources within our organization. We have our employees, for example, are very actively involved in this project. We have Chubb, for example, Chubb and Son Insurance Company. They're involved with us in helping fund the foundation. Through those efforts, we've been able to accumulate enough revenue to turn around and put it back out and partner with larger NGOs. As a good example, International Relief and Development, IRD. They were the first ones that we partnered with. They've been very helpful in helping us take the foundation and get it on track. And it's helped us leverage those precious dollars and get them into the hands of the people that need them to make their visions come true. So like I said a moment ago, it's helping others help others.
Well, looking at these slides here, that's a tremendous thing you're doing. And I know you have a program, and there are several groups. There's one in Germany, and also one here in Washington, D.C., Gifts in Kind. And you have established your own effort to do that, where you're actually getting the overruns or excess inventory that then could be very useful in these at-risk or challenged areas around the globe. How do you actually leverage the Gbg Foundation to actually go out and identify those resources and then be able to get it to the people actually in need that can use those goods and services?
Well, thankfully, we have good partners out there, and like I already mentioned, one was IRD. What happens is, obviously, when you work in a gift in kind format, we're a donor agency. We're not in a situation where we can go out and implement all of this ourselves. So essentially, since we began back in March of last year, we've put approximately $6 million worth of goods and services on the ground that you can see in those photos there. We select very carefully how we're going to go about doing this. The vision that we have is focused on health and education programs. That is one of the visionary points that Mr. Thorburn put in place when he wanted to start this. So when we start to evaluate a project, say International Relief and Development comes with us, and they're partnering with LDS, or they're partnering with the World Food Program, and they say, we're going to do some work in the Horn of Africa. We have X amount of donations from excess organizations. Can you help fund its delivery or its administration or its movement of those products? And that's where we will step up to the bat and do that, especially if it fulfills our dream and our vision as well.
Well, it looks like our Skype connection is working quite well now. And so Steve's sitting beside me. Make sure he doesn't doze off in a minute. I want to let him go ahead and ask a question as well.
Yeah, just a general question. Why has Gbg chosen to focus on international aid?
Very good question. We're going down that route because our company for over 30 years has specialized in the international marketplace. We started out as a small company called TIE, the International Educator, providing health insurance benefits and medical benefits to international schools around the world, many of which were in developing nations. As a result of that, our field representatives that are out there very often came back to headquarters telling us various stories about what they see in the areas that they're serving. And it just kind of snowballed from there. So when we put the organization together, we decided that's where the focus would be, right in the niche of where we do our business.
Well, looking at the Power for Peace, you and I have talked about that when we first met at the Aid and Development Forum here in Washington, D.C., which was an international forum that literally had over 70 countries involved and several hundred organizations and companies. And looking at the Power for Peace, one of the things that we need to do is move beyond just compassion, but also to be able to allow people to invest in these communities and to invest themselves in their own community. So a organization such as a Gbg Foundation, how can it leverage or match what it's doing as far as helping these communities to now move forward where they can become more self-sufficient, independent in water, food, and energy production?
I'm sorry, Sam. I missed the very first part of your question. It went completely blank. Can you? I caught the tail end, but can you give me the first part again, please?
No problem. I was saying that the work that you're doing is very, very important, but the whole world is moving beyond just humanitarian aid as such, and moving to where people are actually investing in infrastructure. and the technologies, the products, the services are needed, and also to allow people to leverage and invest in themselves to do these things by bringing in appropriate technology and products. So how could an organization such as Gbg Foundation help to leverage the work such as the Power for Peace to allow these communities start producing their own food, their own water, and their own power?
Well, as you know, the Power for Peace initiative is really taking these remote villages around the world and bringing them onto their own grid system. They're currently off-grid and they don't have the ability to sustain themselves. In the projects that we're looking for, that is very much a very large criteria, sustainability, hence the education piece of ours. You know, if you teach the sustainability, teach them how to manage their health care, manage their crops, irrigation, all of those various things, then they can become a self-sustaining unit on a permanent basis. And the Power for Peace is doing great initiatives in that area with solar panels and all kinds of things, solar-powered wells, for example, filtration systems. In some of those pictures I sent over, there's a giant water tank that's filled there by solar-powered pumps. Those initiatives tied into with kind gifting from ourselves is what makes this all work. It doesn't, we've all learned that just giving aid in the past brings, substantial relief for a very short and temporary period of time. It's not what this is about. It's development, and the development is very important because that's what's going to make all this move forward for the long run.
Yes, Jim, let's move back to that slide because I really like to show that because it's a composite that we have, and if we can bring up the water tank and also the facilities being built, hopefully we can get the slide brought back up there. But moving on, what kind of organizations is GBG looking for, not just now, but also as it moves forward over the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Well, there's two things. Obviously, we are looking to grow with the NGO community. We're new to that area, and we participated with Interaction this year at their forum just to introduce ourselves. We're hoping through the Global Benefits Group side to be able to work with those organizations where we can bring additional funding directly into the foundation. Those NGOs, depending on their missions and what they're looking to, matching ours is how we would like to take the approach. We're very open-minded to it. It's more important for us to see that things begin to make permanent improvements out there as it is in limiting who we work with. But it is primarily through the NGO networks, again, missionary groups, faith-based organizations, and even here in the United States, stuff like Rotary International, our business partners, that allow us to look at various projects, whether on a local level or international, although 99% of our work will be on the international side. But one of the things I want to point out to responding to that question...
And we only have about 20 seconds left, Jim, so we need to be quick.
Okay, so I'll be quick. It's just that organizations that have those materials, Sam, that are out there, that they can't get to those destinations and they need a leg up, they need to contact us. They need to reach out to the Global Benefits Group Foundation.
Well, thank you for sharing with us, Jim. I wanted to work this in because, as you know, we really do work internationally, and we're talking about the good things that are going on in the United States. We need to reach out. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Our pleasure. Thank you for having us on, Sam.